Welcome to the yesHEis podcast. It is a good day to be in the pod now. I don't want to brag about the weather that we're having here. I know we're going out right across the globe, but the weather is great today, so you're lucky I'm in a good mood. Good to be here with you, Sam.
You talked about the weather within 5 seconds of opening the podcast.
We've never done that before.
That's how good
thought
it
I'd
is.
give it a try.
That's fantastic.
Now, we are here with Cam Gullo today.
Come on now.
Welcome to the yesHEis podcast, where we talk about sharing your faith with confidence so that you can play your part in helping the world know Jesus. And it's going to be a good day because of you, Cam, because you bring the sunshine just like the weather does.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful,
but
isn't it?
the sun is shining outside, so
Sun's also
it's not
shining
actually
outside.
you. It's just in case you let it go to your head.
Yeah.
It's coming from outside.
Too late.
But you're cool too.
Thanks, Sam.
No worries.
Thanks
to be here.
Joining us on the pod today.
Amazing to be
So
here.
you are an artist manager, you're a creative, you're a communicator, you're leading worship teams at a church, and you're just an all-around great guy. But the first thing I want to talk about, before we get into a whole bunch of stuff about evangelism and sharing your faith, is you're a new dad. So
Yeah.
I just, from dad to dad and future dad, because that's you, Sam.
Yeah, honestly, we just the whole podcast is just us having a coffee, just catching up. I'm just going to ask some questions.
That's right.
He's about 8 weeks ahead of me. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
Epic.
yeah.
But are you okay? Because you're a new dad. How long has it been?
4 weeks, doing amazing. God's
Yeah.
blessed us. A little boy named Gideon.
Yeah.
And he's sleeping and eating and doing all the things he should do.
Yeah.
That's great.
The
Love that.
first thing you told us this morning was how many hours did he have last night?
We're 4 weeks in and he slept 5 hours straight last night. So it's
I hear that's good.
good. Very blessed.
Well,
so good.
congratulations.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
What was was there any heart behind naming him Gideon? Any thoughts behind that? Or was it just sounded cool?
Yeah, I've always loved the character Gideon in the
Yep.
scriptures. He was a man full of faith and courage, and pretty epic story. You know, going out with 300 men and
100%.
taking the Midianites, I think it was, that had over 100,000.
Yeah.
You know, the odds are stacked against him.
It's the
100%.
original like 300
It
movie
is.
story.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a pretty sick character, pretty rad.
Yeah, I'm
Pretty
actually going to
rad
name
name.
our child Leonidas. So I like that.
I like that. They'll be best mates.
That's awesome. That's so good.
That's awesome.
I was going to ask a funny follow-up question and then it just came out of my mind.
It's
so
too
let's
funny.
just move on.
It's
It
too
was so
funny that
I
the
just chuckled
laughter
to
in your
myself.
mind was actually louder than the joke itself.
The name is too strong.
Yeah.
You just
Oh,
got
his
caught
middle
up.
name.
Oh, yeah.
What's his middle name?
Charles, which is my dad's name, and Andrew, which is his
Oh, two
other
middle names.
grandfather's name.
Yeah.
Love that.
That's strong. So
Gideon Charles Andrew Gullo.
That's great.
That's
Love
that's
that.
strong.
And this is his very first mention on a podcast. This is incredible.
Wow.
4 weeks old.
I'm
It's all
so
cool.
glad we were here for this moment.
Yeah, this is great.
You mean he's 4 weeks in and he hasn't been mentioned on a podcast yet?
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So hitting
okay.
some milestones pretty late
Wow.
then.
Hey, off to a slow start.
It's okay. Chip away, mate. You'll get there. We'll get there. All right. So tell us just a bit more about like your everyday life. You're artist manager
Yep.
and you're managing like Alex Pappas, who
Yep.
little plug. We've previously had Alex on the podcast.
Yeah, that was a great day.
He's a great worship leader. So look up that podcast if you
Yep.
want to have that hear that conversation. But yeah, you're representing like Alex Pappas, Tekoa. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Southland, Heritage,
Yeah.
bunch of really cool artists. So tell us about what that life looks like and
So I
what you're
started
doing.
in artist management about 5 years ago. I was working for a label in Sydney and got my start doing that. Then I was touring with a bunch of artists. I did some touring with Delta Goodrum all around the world. It was really cool. We actually went on a 3-month tour with the Backstreet Boys.
Oh,
That was
who was
wow.
Backstreet Boys?
Yeah, they had a few hits back in the day.
Yeah.
And anyway, that was really, really fun. And yeah, less so on the guitar nowadays, more just doing the artist management
Yeah.
thing, working primarily with Christian and gospel artists, representing a number here in Australia, as you mentioned, Tekoa and Southland, and then got some in the States, Alexander Pappas, who's part of Hillsong Young and Free, and really just kind of niched down into that one genre. It's just probably the one I know the most.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to Christian music all my life, grew up in the church.
Yeah.
So I just I loved it. And I actually love that a song has an ability to, within the press of a button, go all around the world and really take this message of the gospel in a way that maybe a sermon can't or you and I can't.
Yeah.
And so it's just another vehicle and really blessed that I can do that for my job. And but artist manager kind of looks like in some ways it's a bit of a jack of all trades type role.
Yeah.
You're booking tours, you're kind of working on the music with them in some ways.
Yeah.
You're working on the new merch line.
Yeah.
You might be setting up a podcast. Like it can really be all those things, but really what you're trying to do is take an artist from one level to the next level.
Yeah.
And in doing that, you're sort of sharing the success with
Yeah,
them.
great.
And it's cool doing that for Christian music because it feels like, it's a career, but it's also so missional.
Yeah,
Right. It's
100%.
like, I do this for my job and I have fun and it's a rad thing to be a part of, but man, I'm doing the work of the ministry.
Yeah,
We're able to put out, Jesus music, and there often is this rhetoric like, man, it's such a, it's a flooded market. And it's true. There's so much Christian music now more than ever. But I think there'll never be enough Jesus songs. We can write to the end of our days about this one event, this one person.
Yeah.
So doing that and Tim, as you mentioned as well, help out at my church as well. Do about a day a week there, just on the creative team.
Yeah, great.
I mean, I'm blessed that they pay me a little bit to do that, but I'd probably just do that as a volunteer anyway. I've always been on worship teams all my life.
Yeah.
And in many ways, being on the worship team was sort of part of my apprenticeship to doing what I do now.
Right.
Because, I work with worship artists. So understanding the dynamic of like why songs work in a live environment or a church environment, why they don't, what's connecting. And that's really helped kind of the work side of stuff too.
Yeah.
So you play an instrument, you play guitar. Is that
Guitar,
right?
yeah.
And then you grew up in church, and then I assume you were on the worship team, going out, that sort of thing. Is that was that the open door into getting into this industry for you?
So I asked ChatGPT to write a little message for the lovely people.
Oh yeah,
And
this
it's-
little ad break.
Subscribe, rate, share it with your crew. Living out the message, the realest thing you do. Together, we're helping the world know Jesus. Every step, every share. Let his love free us.
Oh, it was good. It was okay until the end there, but like free us and Jesus.
Sorry, I actually wrote it, not ChatGPT.
I knew it. Anyway, like and subscribe.
Rate and review.
Go do it now.
Back to the episode.
For sure. Before that, my uncle actually was the first lead singer. It's funny to say first, but of the Newsboys.
Right,
And the
okay.
Newsboys actually started out of here, Mooloolaba on the Sunshine Coast.
Okay, yeah.
Peter Furler, my uncle John James, and a few of the other members. And so from an early age, I had a kind of an exposure to this sort of grander Christian music environment.
Yep.
But my uncle left the band in 97, so I was only 7 at the time.
Right.
But yeah, so I think there was some seed sown there. I had this kind of famous uncle in America who played for the Pope once, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, but then growing up in the church, of course, as you said, being around it, I remember getting a Hillsong United CD. Probably their first album was called Every Day. And I remember the lights coming
Every
on.
Day.
Like, whoa, this is for me.
Is that the
I remember
song?
getting that.
Is that
Yeah.
it's like every day?
What to say, Lord? It's every day.
I think that was one of the because I'm not on the
for
worship team at all, but I play a little bit of guitar and
You dabble.
I dabble, and that was I think probably one of the first songs I learned.
Me too.
And it was
Yeah.
oh man, it was such a classic.
Groundbreaking.
It's classic. So
And actually, you search that album cover because I mean, as far as album cover artwork goes, it was cutting edge.
Which one was that one?
Every day.
Yeah, but what's the album?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just no.
everyone's on there.
No, I'm just
okay.
I'm having a dig. It's
Dude,
a little bit
but
generic.
That album, I remember in talking about music and the power it can have. Like, I remember that the lights coming on.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I was like, wow, this
Yeah.
Jesus stuff is for me. And I was only,
Yep.
might have been 11 or 12. And
Yep.
it was such a, it was a turning point for me as a young lad. And it's so cool now, all these years later, to be maybe involved in those moments, like indirectly for people all around the world.
Yep.
Youngsters
100%.
hearing this music and being like, wow. Like,
Yeah.
So
Well, man, Southland as a group, like to me, they're on that same wave almost, like for this generation. In terms of like coming out with songs that a young generation, like, teens and 20s are picking up and like, like we're looking at what's happening over in the UK.
Yeah.
But even in just like locally here, there's worship gatherings.
Yeah.
And these guys are, they're leading it. And I'm not talking like, tens of young adults or youth. It's like hundreds, gathering just off their own bat and making their own worship night because Sundays aren't enough. And it's like, this is awesome.
it's
And
really
that's
cool to see.
Yeah.
And, so it's like, yes, it's sort of this rinse and repeat thing if you sort of put your boring hat on. But on the flip side, it's just like, no, the Holy Spirit's on the move.
Yeah.
Yeah, amen.
There's always songs to sing. There's always fresh ways. There's always fresh generations that need to be touched. And I can see that happening through
and I love
artists
that God's
like
using
Southland.
music. I mean, he uses so many things, but something special about music, because I read this great book from N.T. Wright called Surprised by Hope.
Yeah.
And he's giving us, his best understanding of what the life to come is. And of course, he describes it, it's like signposts in the fog.
Right.
He's like, we've got pointers, but it's a bit blurry.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things he puts out in this book is he goes about music. He goes, why it's so different from every other art form, it's different to film, it's different to food, it's different to all these other experiences, is we know music's come from the by and by, it's come from the beyond. We know that they sing in heaven.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of the only things we kind of do know about it.
Yeah,
and
true.
so that's what's so different about it. And why we sing, part of the reason I believe we sing in our services is because it's this almost a conduit to the divine in some way. And you could have listened to secular music, as it were, and still people have these experiences.
Yeah.
You add a Jesus melody, Jesus lyrics, it's the next level. So I think God's always used it and he's using it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what happens. I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but like Coldplay, right? As an experience and as a band, and even hearing like Chris Martin, the lead singer, like talk about how he writes songs and like he's got really, I love hearing him talk about it because he's got really interesting ways of interacting with, the muse or where does it come from? And he's very humble in the way that he talks about his craft. It's like it comes from somewhere else. And you can like, I'm not reading into that or like saying that's like, but it's
something's going on.
Something's going on there. Like what you say, it's a conduit to heaven. And it's like, well, the rain falls on the godly and the godless.
Yeah, so true.
And God shines on, everybody. And I'm like, well, I feel like that's interesting to me.
There's another book called The War of Art, not The Art of War. It's kind of a play on that, but The War of Art. And Stephen Pressfield, the writer, he's not a believer in Jesus, but he's a believer in the divine. So he's getting close. But he says that he sits down to work, and before he puts pen to paper, he thanks the divine. He goes, because something's going on where there's a download. Like when he sits down to write a melody, like, where does this melody come from? It's not there, and then all of a sudden it is.
Yep.
And so he sits down and acknowledges and thanks the divine. Hey, today we just see it fit to give me the melody.
Yeah.
Right. Because it is co-creating in some strange fashion.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. It wasn't and now is. So so even guys that aren't Christians are acknowledging that there's something happening in this process.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's powerful.
So just to get really practical for a moment, I'd love to talk more into your story in just a moment, but what would you say to Christian creative, maybe someone who writes worship songs and maybe, or either, is wanting to write songs in the secular market or just Christian songs about Jesus that aren't worship? How would you encourage them based on what you've seen and your ideas about how that, we talk about evangelism here at yesHEis, obviously that's what we're here, but like, how would you encourage someone who's sort of got a gift or is thinking about stepping out and writing these kinds of things? How have you seen it proclaim the kingdom of God on earth? And how would you encourage them to step forward in that?
Well, I think that as Christians, we have an obligation to be incredible at our craft. The proverb Solomon writes, he goes, by good planning and hard work, one becomes successful. So it's these two things, the coterminous, like work hard and plan well, right? Those two things, it's not just one or the other. They're coterminous in that way. So also, one of my mentors said to me, they said, get so good at your craft in your 20s, because in your 30s, your friends become the decision makers. And I'm seeing that to be true now in my mid 30s.
Right.
All my kind of teens and my 20s, I was chipping away.
Yeah.
And not maybe seeing the tangible, obvious successes that I thought I would have, you know, and I remember getting a bit down about it, like going through, man, where's the wins? Then there was a tipping point. And now being in my 30s, all the people that I've been doing life with over the last couple of decades, rubbing shoulders with, are all in positions of influence now.
Okay.
And so it's not like I'm arriving at inverted commas networking events to build my network. They're just the people I've been doing life with.
Yeah.
Right.
We've all been working on our craft, and now God's using it. And so I think there's definitely there are very few shortcuts. There might be some, I'm not aware of them, but I don't think there are many. It's just good planning and hard work, as Solomon tells us.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
And God's going to use it. You know, I've always been, always kind of had the opinion that if I just like if I just stuck around, like God will use me.
Yeah.
You know, like I always think about the guy, the gentleman with the 3 talents that Jesus talks about, one of his parables. One was given 1 talent, the other 2, the other 5. And I don't know if I never associated with the 5 talent guy. I always thought I was maybe the 2 talent guy. Right. Like, yeah, I've got a few things that I'm working with.
Solid middle
just
ground.
solid, you know? But I was like, man, if I'm just faithful with what God gives me and don't bury it in the ground, God's going to use it. And I'm really testament to that now. Like, you know, everyone gets dealt a hand. Everyone gets a certain amount of talents.
Yeah.
But God's wanting us to use that and by good planning and hard work.
Yeah. Great. Love that.
Great.
I love the proactivity and the diligence behind that. And also like marrying those 2 things together is the hard work and the planning. Because I think sometimes you can do the planning and you forfeit the hard work, or you're a hard worker, but it's futile.
No strategy.
Yeah. 100%. Can I ask about like, because you mentioned earlier, I can't remember if it was before we started recording or not, but you talked about how in your family there are pastors, like your brother, your dad. Like, was there any part of you growing up where there was a wrestling with, I feel God, like there is a platform that God's given me to be able to reach the world and share Jesus in this way, but was there a tension to pursue ministry and that in like being a pastor, and like how did you outwork that?
So I grew up in I'm really thankful for the home I grew up in. Like dad's mum and dad were in full-time ministry. Dad's also a periodontist. So he had he studied science and did that whole thing. And so around the dinner table, I'm one of 5 kids. We grew up and it was just conversation every night. And, you know, we'd do a Bible study and it wouldn't just be a blindly believe. It would be around discussion. So lads, what do we think about this? Dad would say, we'd open up the conversation, and he's an intelligent guy. So he'd have a good answer. And so growing up, I had a confidence in my faith and actually, which is so cool because as it comes to evangelism, Peter encourages 1 Peter 3:15, be prepared to give a defense for the faith that you have within you. And I feel like that was my upbringing. Like I would go to school and not be like, just singing Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. There was actually really which is a great song, by the way, and I'm singing to my son most nights. But there was like, I had some like information in my back pocket. You know, I felt like I was set up for a win in that way. And I'm so grateful for my dad for creating that environment where we could have those conversations. We felt like there was good historical evidence for the case for Christ in the scriptures. And so, but more directly answering your question, mum and dad never pushed me into ministry. We had to be at church every Sunday. And even, you know, when we were 13, 14, didn't want to go anymore. Dad's like, that's fine. You don't have to go when you're 18. You know, so like we always knew there was an out. That's it. When I'm 18, I ain't going. But of course, over those years, I fell in love with Jesus, you know, and mum and dad, of course, were, you know, busy running the church. But anytime there was something happening, dad was the first one to leave work and be there, you know, be there at a sporting game or be there if there was you know, so I didn't feel like we didn't have parents because they were, you know, because the church had them. No way. Like they I really have to give them credit. They figured out a balance that worked.
Awesome.
And
that's so good.
So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, great. And then when you were stepping into like you talked about touring, you talked about managing artists, that sort of stuff. Have you felt like you've been able to find a sweet spot for you personally with your temperament and the gifts and talents that God's given you and the calling that you feel He's placed on your life? Do you feel like you've been able to sort of find that niche for you where like sharing Jesus is most effective because it aligns with who God's created you to be? Yeah,
man. Like, I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, but I'll get straight to the guts of it. I was, you know, had a real encounter with Jesus as a youngster. I talk about even those moments, listening to the music and the lights coming on, you know, going to youth camp. So I really felt like I had encountered the Holy Spirit, you know. So He was real to me. And of course, as I continue to grow, we keep diving deeper and see how deep the rabbit hole really goes on this stuff. But so I was confident in my faith. You know, I'd seen God move. I'd seen people being healed. I'd seen these things that had taken place, which gave me a confidence in my faith. Also, I was convinced and still am of the teachings of Jesus. I think that He's laid out the greatest roadmap for existence ever in all of history. And people that truly catch that become the greatest people. You know, we see in the first couple of hundred, you know, the first few centuries post Jesus, they were trying to wipe out Christians, but they kept acknowledging, like a lot of the Roman historians, but they're the best people. They're actually taking care of the poor and the females and the widows, and they were starting hospitals and education. So as much as they didn't like that people were converting to Christendom, they saw that the benefits of the people following the way was just incredible. You know, it made them stick out. And so I'm convinced that Jesus has made the greatest roadmap. So that gives me a confidence in the marketplace that I'm not trying to make converts to some strange, bizarre belief system. It's like this guy lived, he died and resurrected, and his teachings better humanity.
It's amazing when I think that becomes so real to you, where it's like when your faith and what you believe is so when you understand it, it's like it's the obvious answer to the questions and the challenges of the world, and you know it to be so fruitful in your own life. It's like you can't help but like share that. You can't help but like help other people to come align to that same way of thinking. And it's not like I've got this agenda, or it's not like I am, trying to, pull the rug out from underneath you, but it's like, it's a natural way of thinking and it makes sense. And there's a track record of it, not just in my life, but in billions of other people's lives.
Yeah.
And like Jesus set that example for us in the Bible. And so it's just like, it makes so much sense, because it doesn't just apply to my life, but it bears fruit in the workplace as well. And so it's so cool to see that it's just so natural for you.
Well, man, I think when you look at the letters that Paul wrote to the early church, each of the letters, one to the Colossians and Ephesus and Galatians and Romans and these famous letters, they're all got a different temperature because he knows the audience that he's speaking to.
Right.
And I think that's important for us as believers, just as important for us today, knowing the environment which we're speaking to, being here on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, I would say it's generally an easier environment.
Right.
People, there's a lot of churches up here and people have a good impression of Christians, and that makes it's less hostile. But nonetheless, it is a different Australia than it was 50 years ago. We have a lot of immigration to Australia, for right or wrong, but we do have that. And a lot of times people coming from countries that aren't Christian. And so, whereas once 50 years ago, I wasn't alive then, but you'd be preaching from the pulpit to a largely Christian Australia. But now it's not so. I'm not totally up to speed with the numbers, but happy to be corrected here. But less than 20% of Australians are active church members. It's very different from 50 years ago when it was, to my understanding, it was over 80%.
Yeah.
So now I've heard it said, well, I might have even been talking to you about this separately, Tim, but like, people say, "Oh, we're in a post-Christian era." I actually think we're in a pre-Christian era.
Yeah, I agree.
There's an environment now that people haven't even not only they're not Christian, they don't even know who Jesus is.
Yeah.
Because secular society has removed Jesus from these high holidays like Christmas, replaced it with Santa, Easter, replaced it with the bunny, and whatever else. I'm going, "Wow, man, we're actually. It's important that we know the audience under which we're speaking." And so for me, that's something I've spent time considering. It's like, all right, who's my audience? When I'm speaking to someone at the cafe that I've got a relationship with, cool, I'm going to present the gospel in such a way. When I'm touring on the road and I'm in a really secular environment, maybe that's typically hostile to faith.
Yeah.
I'm gonna slightly shift the way that I present the gospel.
Yeah.
And Paul was a master at that.
Yeah. Didn't he say like all things to all people? You've got to be all things to all people. And so it's like there's a different tone, there's a different strategy when you're talking to different people.
Totally.
And so that makes sense. And I love that there is like, you're so aware of that and you can make those adjustments on the fly depending on the audience. Because you would encounter so many, like such a variety of different people in the marketplace and in your sphere of influence. Like it would be wild, the different people you talk to. So you'd have to make those adjustments on the fly. You're like, oh, I'm talking to this person. I'm going to talk in this way, but over here, I've got to talk in this way. And that's
like us all, like everyone is experiencing that. Reinhard Bonnke said, faith is spelled R-I-S-K. And it's such a great quote and it's true. And I feel like, I feel that step every time I share the gospel, I'm stepping out in faith.
Yeah.
It's a risk.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm nervous. Even someone as confident as me, I'm still nervous, you know, and I don't know why. Where does that come from? Where's the fear come from? But fear is not from God. Yeah. So I'm going to step out in faith, and we know that God blesses that. And like anything, it's a muscle. The more you do it, like I always say, remove the mystery, remove the fear. So the first time it's pretty scary, even like going to a cafe after church and for lunch, and someone, hey, how's your morning? What have you been up to? Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we feel that tension to say, oh, I've just come from church. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
But now I do. I don't allow myself to just to breeze over it, because more often than not, people go, "Oh, church, really?
Yeah,
oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
What church do you go to?"
Yeah.
And the conversation, you know, so I even when I'm on public transport, I'll take a physical Bible.
Yeah.
Because I'll know, like, you don't know who's going to sit next to you and going to be on a phone, could be scrolling anything.
Yeah.
Even if you ask on the Bible, they don't know. But if you've got a physical Bible, down it's on a plane, it opens up conversations.
Yeah. That's great.
And so, but it's removing that fear. But there is a tension there. But once you do it a couple of times, you realize it's not scary. And my observation is that most people either, when you bring it up, they're either interested to keep talking about it, or if they're not interested, it's not hostile. They go, "Oh, okay, cool, moving on."
Yeah.
So this, can be built up to be bigger than what the reality actually is.
Yeah, for sure. I'll let you ask a question in just a second. Sorry, I was just taking over. But I had one other question. Like, you've talked about this, that there's all these experiences you've had. Is there any stories, like, off the top of your mind of where you've shared Jesus and it was like,
Bro, that was literally my question.
Was that?
So you hear, like, would you like to ask a question? And then you just ask
all right, well, you ask a question. You go. No. You ask a question. No, I'm not talking anymore.
Well, no, it's great. Like, that's the question. Like, because we love to get practical, and it's just like, how have you, I'm just curious, because being in secular environments, being in environments where it's like in the industry, and it's just like, I don't know, like, I'm assuming you might even be in rooms where it's just like, like, I don't know what the temperature of this room is with regards to faith. Like, what experiences do you have in that, and some cool stories to just sort of put some just flesh and blood and
to encourage our audience
as
well.
Yeah.
So one year I was doing like a Christmas show on television. I was playing guitar, and it was like a production, kind of, they do those big Cows on the Domain, those sorts of things. So I was doing one of those, and backstage. So, a lot of those Christmas shows nowadays, most of the songs are Santa songs, Frosty the Snowman and whatever else. Like, they might do a Silent Night at most, but nowadays there's just not really a lot of those Jesus focused Christmas songs. But nonetheless, Christmas is Christmas. And people, if you've grown up in the show, you probably know that even though the nativity scenes are just deers and stuff now, you probably maybe know that there's this Jesus character involved somewhere in that.
Yeah.
And I was in the kind of catering room before going on stage, and sat down with some people. And again, I knew these people, but they weren't like, I wasn't super tight with them. And one by one, more people were sitting down. There's probably 10 people at this table sitting at. And one of the guys turns to me and goes, "Hey, aren't you a Christian? What do you like? What's the deal with Jesus and Christmas?" And just sort of open up the dialogue. And it was almost like at once all the conversations around this table went silent and turned.
Someone's like just about to put like an hors d'oeuvre in their mouth, and they're like,
now I knew
the record scratch,
right? And so I knew who these guys were. And in the entertainment business, you got all manner of characters, and I just, for a moment, they just stopped, and I said, and this is often a prayer I say under my breath in these moments. I go, "Lord, would you give me the wisdom and the words like you gave to Moses and Aaron?" Because Moses was going to Pharaoh, and he was like, I can't, I've got a stutter, I can't speak well. And God said to him, "Don't worry, I'll give you the words to say."
Right.
And so it was the exact prayer I prayed. Lord, give me the words to say in this moment. Because I realized the gravity of these moments, when some of these people are hearing maybe the gospel for the first time, or maybe they've had a bad experience with the Christian, but now they're going to have a good one. And so, your chest is going, everyone's listening.
But also the weight that these guys carry, because like in the industry, like they would be movers and shakers. Like they would have so much influence more, than general. So that's like, what an incredible opportunity.
Yeah. And I just went for it.
Yeah.
Right. And you just go, "Lord, you're just gonna have to guide me." Right. But of course, like, I've done some preparation too. Like, I'm not there as just like I'm not a totally empty vessel. Like, I've got some things to bring to the table. That's why I know God's using it, because I'm putting in some of the preparation in my own time. Like, I'll spend time on YouTube, and I've even used some of the yesHEis resources as well. Like, listening to these evangelism videos, and like how to share the gospel in 60 seconds. Like, there's so much good stuff out there. There's a young lad named Bryce Crawford, I think is his name.
I've heard of Bryce.
Yeah, Bryce. And have you really?
Yeah.
Dude, and he is such a great inspiration. So I watch his videos, and he's just out there boldly sharing the gospel in such a great way. Like, even Wesley Huff at the moment, he was just on the, he's one of the leading apologists in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
Apologist, is that the right word? Yep.
Yep.
And he was on the, whose show was it this week? The Andrew Schultz.
Right.
Andrew Schultz podcast. He's one of the biggest comedians in the world. And you got a theologian apologist on one of the biggest comedian podcasts in the world. There's a real temperature shift happening right now. Yeah. And he is just so eloquent in his delivery of the gospel, so knowledgeable. And I'm just sitting there drinking it in, like, give it to me. Stuff from your podcast, all around. So God knows, the Holy Spirit knows, hey, like Cam's got some tools in his back pocket.
Yeah. I feel like that
so
highlights to me what you were saying before, where the world is, or at least parts of the world is increasingly less post-Christian and more pre-Christian. And the fact that people are asking questions about like, who is this Jesus guy? And what's Christmas and what's Easter? And like, I feel like these are things that you assume that the world knows about. It's like people don't share their faith. They don't share Jesus because they think, oh, well, they already know all the facts. And so they already know about faith. And so I'm not going to bother because what's my drop of voice in an ocean of other people's opinions? But the reality is that everyone else's algorithms aren't the same as yours. So they're not getting the gospel. They're not getting the basic facts of the gospel that yes, we are all broken. We're all messed up. We're all jacked. But like when it comes down to it is that no one actually makes that hits that point of righteousness. No one's good enough. And that's the good news of the gospel is that you don't have to be.
Yeah, that's right.
It's because Jesus was. And it's like people, like we've been talking about statistics recently about how open to the idea of faith and that there is a God that Gen Z is that there is an increasing receptivity to the divine. And so there is actually this incredible open door that we have to share the gospel, but people don't because they assume that everyone knows everything. But
I think that's where pre-Christian is more of an opportunity than a Christian society, as in like, or even post-Christian, because it's like when I was a teenager in the 90s and it 100% wasn't cool to be a Christian at my school.
Yeah.
But
until every day from United.
Every day from Hillsong United.
Yeah.
But maybe a lot of those opinions were quote unquote well-informed, as in the sense of like kids in my school knew the gospel. Like we were forced to be in chapel every day. It was articulated to them, everyone's on their own journey. But I feel like when people kind of know about Jesus or whatever, then they can kind of throw him out or whatever. But I feel like what I'm seeing more recently is people coming and being like, what the heck? Like who is Jesus? What is the deal? And so they may be more, and not to be rude, but ignorant, like categorically, not knowing. But then once they find out, it's like, oh my goodness, that's actually what I'm looking for, because society has no sort of critical mass of this anymore. And so people are like actually aching for it a bit more. And so when they hear the truth, it's like, it is for the first time. They haven't got any preconceptions. And so potentially.
Well, I think that there are preconceptions, but I think that they're a little bit unfounded or misguided, because I think a lot of people they assume that Christianity is about trying to be a good person. Everyone knows a Christian by the tweets and the one-liners and that sort of stuff, and all of them are actually unfounded. And well, not they're fairly false.
Yeah. Well, think about Jesus was tried for crimes he didn't commit. Yeah, and same with many of the apostles that pretty much were all martyred for what. So it's been there since the start that this whole, and of course we know because there's a real enemy out there that hates the gospel, hates everything that this is all about. Yeah. And is fighting a losing battle, but nonetheless is fighting it. And so, I think it's been the problem since the dawn of Christendom, no less in our age. Yeah. And this is just our time now. Yeah. And so like the three gentlemen with the talents, we're all given a different measure. I actually love, we spoke about 1 Peter 3:15, be prepared to give a defense for the faith you have within you. But there's an adjacent scripture to that for evangelism that I love, and it's actually from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. He tells us, let your light shine, speaking to you and me, speaking to all of us. So let your light shine that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. I love there's a 3 steps to that. You got a light within you, which is the Holy Spirit. That should compel you to good works, which I believe is true for every single Christian. And then as a result of that, people will glorify God, right? And so that's what they were observing with the early Christians in the first few centuries after Christ, is that they were doing all this good stuff. They were taking care of the widow, the poor, the way that they treated people from other faiths and religions and cultures, and, creating education systems and all this stuff. They couldn't take that from them, and it ultimately became their great witness, and so I think that is cool because, all right, some of us might struggle with the Peter part, which is the defense, be prepared with the have a defense, but we can all do the light shining and the good works.
Yes.
That's true for everyone. And we can at least start. We should be having both, but that's from Jesus himself.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
love that.
Have you ever wanted to share your faith but felt unsure of what to say? Maybe you've hesitated, wondering if you'll have the right words or even if the conversation might be awkward. Well, that's where the yesHEis app comes in. The yesHEis app helps you to share your faith with confidence. And it's packed with practical tools and resources to help make sharing Jesus a natural part of everyday life. When you step out and share your faith, you can even log your actions and see them light up a world map alongside others around the world that are sharing their faith too. So if you're looking for a simple way to step out and make a difference, download the yesHEis app today. It's free, it's simple, and will encourage you to share Jesus with confidence. Now, back to the show.
So with that, because, you're talking about, the devil having an agenda and he's in the fight and he's, he'll throw up fear, he'll throw up, destroying your self-confidence. I couldn't do that. All of those, lies in our mind, which, playing in that analogy, that those are all the things that prevent us from putting our light.
Sure.
You don't have a light. Your light's not worth it. It's not bright enough. If you put it on the stand, everyone's going to laugh at your light, all of that. So in those moments at the cafe, in whatever moments are thrown up, can you talk us through how, because you touched on it before, just breaking through that threshold of confidence, and just being assertive, being active. Talk us through how that's looked like for you.
First up, I've prayed prayers all my life. And if you haven't been praying these prayers, now's a great time to start. But Lord, would you give me courage? Give me courage and boldness like you gave the apostles. I'm praying that most days. God, give it to me. Give me a portion of that. Because those boys were crazy out of their mind, just so courageous in the face of death.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, Lord, if you just give me a little slice of that, do you know what I mean? I want it. And I know I've been already given a portion of it. I'm confident. And I'm pretty happy to be here, and so, some people are more confident, less confident, but give it to me, God, give me more of that stuff. So that's an active prayer that I pray. Lord, give me wisdom like you gave to Solomon. God, give me the words to say like you gave to Moses. They're all there on the table. The scriptures encourage us to pray and ask the Father who will so generously give to those who ask. They're all the scriptures are filled with this stuff. So
I love how you're looking at people from the Bible as well for that. Because often we can can you give me confidence? Can you, but confidence or boldness or
words
articulation I love that, because it's first of all, just betting it in scripture. But it's then giving you a bit of a vision. It's you can read those stories and unpack, what was happening for that person.
It's a compelling example that you can pin your life on.
Yeah. So I'm looking at those guys. And then of course we've got people in real time around us today. You look at guys I'm sure we're all massive fans of Billy Graham. What a person, and I'm so inspired by him, his life and his ministry. So I'm just trying to drink from that well, you know, and so I'm doing that. And then just really removing the fear, because I think that's the big one, remove the mystery, you remove the fear. And that first time is the hardest, right? That first time you tell someone you're a Christian or you've been at church that morning. Once you do that and you realize, it's actually not scary at all. And actually, they were probably into it. Because I think people are genuinely searching for truth. We're seeing that everywhere right now. And so give it a go. Start. I invited a friend to our Easter service a couple of weeks ago, and he'd been a newer friend of mine. And for some reason, I just felt that I was a bit awkward. Man, do I really want to invite him? We're being buds. We've kind of, hung out a couple of times. I'm he probably won't be into it. And I was like, no, I'm doing it. So I just sent him a text. Hey, bro, got a amazing Easter service. It's it's probably the big event for our church every year. It's a really important date in the Christian calendar. Be so sick to have you come.
I'm one of the pastors. I need to invite 15 people.
Exactly. And so it probably wasn't even that involved. I think the text dude, it'd be so cool to have you at the Easter service. It's the best service of the year. And he hit me back in 2 minutes. Love to be there. Can't wait.
I
was
so good.
It was that. But I had all this fear around it, and I just went, okay, let's just put it out there.
Just send it.
We did a letterbox drop as well. for our Easter services as a church. So we printed off like thousands of flyers, encouraging everyone to take some. And so, you know, I was like, oh man, maybe I'll go at nighttime and do all the letterbox drops, like when no one's out on their front yard. But I was like, no, I'm doing it at 3 p.m. because everyone's walking home with their kids from school and they're on their front porch. And so I was like, that's the hardest hour in my mind. So I'm like, that's the hour I'm doing it. So I was dropping, and sometimes people would be on their front porch, and so I'd just hand it to them. And I remember this one lady was like, no, thank you. Before I'd even said anything, done anything, she just saw that I was handing things out. And I said, oh, it's an invitation to an Easter service. She goes, oh, Easter? What church? And I said the name of our church. She goes, oh, yes, please. And so before I'd even given her, you know, she was saying no because I assumed she maybe thought I was selling something. But really, she wanted the flyer. I don't know if she came, but nonetheless, I was like, cool. Like I am actively trying to fight this fear because I'm just sold out to the way of Jesus. I think the world needs the message, the gospel, and I want God to use me.
I love that. Can I?
Yeah.
Oh, that's my alarm.
Oh,
I'm going to move my car soon.
Oh no.
That's all right. Let me just quickly turn that off so it's less awkward. But what I love about that is that there is I feel like I really admire for you that there is this proactive pursuit of extinguishing fear in your life, because I think it's so easy to allow yourself to be led by fear. It's so easy to let that be your guiding principle. It's so easy to be like, it's, you know, fear. I'm always going to feel fear. So that's just the way I'm wired or whatever it might be. But the reality is that scripture says that you have not been given a spirit of fear.
Amen.
And so any fear that you're feeling is not actually from God. In fact, it's the opposite.
Yeah, that's right.
And so what God does give you is a spirit of power, love, and self-control, or sound mind. And so to actively extinguish fear in your life and instead pursue those things so diligently, that inspires me, because I'm like, I think I need to do that more. I think I need to be more active in that pursuit to let go of that and hang on to that. Like that.
It's cool, man. I'm encouraged even hearing it.
Yeah, 100%.
Thanks.
The other thing that stood out in our previous conversation was intentionality. And you were saying that you write down salvation goals or goals for sharing your faith over a year.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit? What does that look like? You know, what color's the journal that you write it in? Do you have a mood board with their pictures?
Is it
moleskin?
No.
Yeah, it's got everyone's names printed out on faces printed out. Yeah. So
it's a little bit creepy.
So it's under. Yeah, anyway,
it's on my wall. This red string.
Yeah, that's right. That meme of that guy. So my wife and I would do our annual goals. You know, financial goals, faith goals. Career goals, all those sorts of things, and salvation goals is on that list. So I write down how many people I want to lead to the Lord. I've never hit it once, but I'm always trying to set ambitious goals. It might be, hey, I want to lead 5 people to the Lord this year, or 10 or 20 or 50, whatever the goal is for you, but I'm putting it there. So I'm continually running, okay, cool, am I hitting this? We were we're checking in our goals, how are we tracking? And that's just one of them, right? Because I recognize it's just something that I want to do. And if I'm measuring it, I might get better at it and do it more.
And so what does that look like then? Is it actual people's names, or does it start with a number and then it gets more detailed as you go?
For me, it's pretty basic, but I normally just set a number. I want to do 12 this year, 1 a month, for example. I want to lead. I want to say the sinner's prayer, lead them in that, or have them come to church and be led in that. But I'm looking for conversions to Christ. Because we're sowing seeds all the time. And that's massive too. And I touched on it before with the parable of sower. I think that parable of sower in our circles gets often used a lot for the tithes and offering sermon, but really Jesus actually goes on to translate it. When you keep reading, he goes, it's about souls. And he goes, the sower sows the seed, which is the word. And it says some fell on thorny ground, stony ground, bad ground, I think was the other one, and then good ground. And I often think, if the sower knew what the good ground was, he'd just collect all the seed and put it in that one little patch of ground, but he didn't know. And that's us. So I don't know, every conversation, every invitation, I don't know if it's good ground or not, but I'm just like the sower. I just got to scatter the seed.
I
don't know what the good.
So because you start with that number, but then obviously as you go about life, that's going to start to then frame your thinking and frame your focus about is this person, good soil, or is this, or where are the opportunities, no matter what the soil, so that you can just kind of.
It's also just keeping it top of mind.
Well, that's
But so certainly setting those goals is something I started doing a few years ago. I'd like to hit the number one year. But again, it's just.
But I think it's not even about that necessarily. It's just about the frame of thinking and your focus, like you say, because you're going through the year being like, I'm actually being intentional. Like I've hit 1 or I've hit 3, but there's still more to go. And so. To me, it's just a great little method to just go, hey, like, am I setting goals and am I moving towards them?
Totally. Like anything, right? But as Christians, the Great Commission is to go into all the world, preach the gospel, make disciples. That's what Jesus asked us to do. So why isn't that on my goal sheet?
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be like convicting. It's convicting for me. And I love what you said before. Like, this is a little bit bringing it back to one thing, but something you said that I think that's like, we could probably repeat that over and over and over again, but remove the mystery, remove the fear. That's powerful. Like
Sick.
that's gonna touch somebody, I think, because because people are, like I was saying before, the fear is quite prevalent in their life, but it's only because it's enshrouded in mystery. And so the sharing, the taking that step, the sending that text message, it's just because there's mystery. And so the fear is actually just it's just because it's an unknown quantity of what the outcome is and that sort of stuff. But once you just take that step, you do it once, and it's like, oh, that was easy. They even said no, but that's okay. I'm doing okay. And so like the mystery's gone. So taking that next step becomes a little bit easier. You got the momentum.
You got it.
I love that. That's cool.
It's rad.
So good. Mate, thank you so much for joining us today.
Been an honor.
It's been really cool. We've hit a whole bunch of different things, but honestly, I feel like if you've been listening today and you generally don't feel confident, or you're just really trying to get over that threshold of taking that first step, I'd really encourage you to lose the mystery. Get clear, set some intentional goals, and then just take that step. Send it, right? And I think as soon as you do that, you're going to find that, you don't die.
And if you did, I'm really sorry that we said this. That's how bad.
So I hope you've been encouraged by the conversation today. Thank you, Cam. Thanks for this conversation.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate you guys.
But thank you so much for just doing the work in the background, on yourself, and then just having courage and confidence to just really articulate that today. I know that's encouraged a lot of people. So
love it, guys. Thanks so much. God bless.
You too. Amen. See you next week, guys.
Good stuff.
All right.
That was fantastic.
Thanks, boys. That was fun.
Yeah.